So thank you everybody for coming tonight, and it's lovely to see so many of you here. And we're delighted to have with us Danny Cohen, who read English at LMH between 1992 and 95. I have this right. Danny and I have just been wandering nostalgically through the corridors of LMH. Yeah. Danny has seen his portrait in the Hall of Fame in the Dennehy corridor, alongside another member of his English year group, Kathy Newman. Well, what can I say about Danny as an undergraduate? He was incredibly bright. One of his former tutors, Nick Shrimpton, is also in the audience as well, and we can testify to the fact that Danny was an exceptional undergraduate who got a first and did really, really well, and was always fun to teach, actually, and made the most, actually, of his time here, I think. And after that, I think I'm right in thinking that you did go to the USA, didn't you?
I went to the USA to work with a band for a while.
That was it.
Yeah, so it was just to kind of, I got to see a lot. I think I went to about 40 states across America in a year and a half or something. So I think I wrote you a letter or two from there.
Several letters, actually.
Several,
yeah, so I have the Danny Cohen archive of letters still, actually, from that time. And then you came back, and then that was at the point, I think, at which you started working in television. Yeah. So I've checked this out, actually. So Danny's progress, by any accounts, actually, is pretty remarkable. Meteoric, I think people have often described it as. In 2008, the Times described Danny as the boy wonder of British television. Nice. Can't live that down, yes. Right. And so after a 7-year stint, I think roughly between 2000 and 2007, have I got this right, working as head of documentaries at Channel 4 and head of E4, you then became controller of BBC Three. Have I got this right?
That's correct.
May 2007 and October 2010. And during that time, as controller of BBC Three, you vastly increased the youth share, and there are many famous commissions from that time, including Our War, the BAFTA-nominated Blood, Sweat and T-shirts, and Blood, Sweat and Takeaways, the Undercover Princes, Britain's Missing Top Model, the World's Strictest Parents, I remember that, the adult season, Russell Howard's Good News, Young Voters Question Time, Stacey Dooley Investigates, Lip Service, and so forth, and Being Human. And actually, the one thing that my son would probably remember is that you were responsible, I understand, for the popularity of Family Guy. Yes.
Yeah, that was actually very important to the channel, because that was one of the things that really drew in a lot of young viewers. We put it on the same time every night, and it became a bit of an appointment to view thing. So we knew they would come in for that at 11 o'clock and stay. So no, that was very important, actually.
I watched it a lot.
Oh, good.
So I'm very knowledgeable about Family Guy.
Yeah, it's a very good show.
I don't know if we should actually admit that, really. It's probably
yeah.
not the thing I should admit. But at that, you then took over in 2010 as controller of BBC One between 2010 and 2013, and then you had some very famous commissions, which included Call the Midwife, Happy Valley, Car Share, Poldark, The Casual Vacancy, The Voice, Last Tango in Halifax, Eat Well for Less, The Missing, and War and Peace. So pretty remarkable, a bunch of things, really, a bunch of programmes. And then in May 2013, you rose again and became director of BBC Television. And I think you spent about 8 years there?
No, less.
Less than that,
yeah. It was an intense period. It probably felt like 8 years, yeah.
And then I think, I'm not wrong in saying that by 2014, BBC Television was the most successful UK television network. That's right, you left in 2016, yeah. When you were doing incredibly well, and really at the height of your success, to pursue a new challenge as the head of Access Entertainment, whose aim, I think, was to produce high-quality television, films and theatrical productions. And so as a tribute, when you left, I understand Tony Hall, Director General of the BBC, said, Danny has done an extraordinary job over the last 8 years at the BBC in a world of intense competition and choice. He has further enhanced the BBC's reputation for quality programming that is full of ambition and creativity. And he has also made an outstanding contribution to comedy and entertainment. So, all in all, a very remarkable career. So when you I want to ask a bit, doubling back to your time when you were a student here,
Yeah.
which we've just been, nostalgically walking around the library and thinking about the essays that you wrote and the tutorials that
Visiting
you had.
your office, you taught me
In Old Hall, that's right, yeah. So when you were a student here, did you have an idea that you would go on to have this kind of career? Did you always want to be to go into television, or
No.
what did you think of?
No, I didn't at all. I remember us having a conversation at one point in third year about maybe doing some postgraduate stuff.
Yes, yeah.
And I thought quite hard about that. And I didn't really know when I left what I was going to do. I had a little bit of TV experience here. I don't know if you remember, but there was a BBC Two documentary made about a student applying here from Whitley Bay.
Yes.
His name was John Locker.
Yes,
Remember
I
that?
do, yeah.
And for reasons I can't remember, I ended up helping the production team whilst they were in college. And they tried to give me a bit of money at the end. And I said, rather than have take some money, can I have some work experience? So one university holiday, I went up to Leeds and did some work experience for that production company. But I didn't really know when I left what I wanted to do. No, I must admit.
So how did that then evolve?
I think after I left, I thought about it properly. I was hopefully quite focused on being here in the degree rather than thinking too far ahead. I didn't go to any of that milk round. Does the milk round thing still happen?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's not called that anymore, I think. Right. But yes.
Yeah. So I didn't go to any of that. I don't think I just didn't think about it too much. And I think I probably thought back to the experience I'd had, that work experience, and thought I'd give it a go and see how it went. And it seemed like a way of being involved in something creative. I wanted to find something that would allow me to carry on being creative, I suppose, and that felt like a good thing to try. But I didn't go into really with any expectation whether it would last, really, or whether I'd want to try something else.
Right, so it's almost serendipitous in a kind of funny way.
Yeah.
So coming back to LMH, what is it that you most remembered about your time here? What was it that you most liked, and what was it that you liked least, if there was anything?
Yeah, so I really liked the work. I mean, I really did. And I feel grateful now, actually, to have had the opportunity to study English literature, as you do here, from Anglo-Saxon onwards, and have that really, all the way through. So I really did like it. And I really, went back into that library and had very fond memories. It's a very, very intense period in your life. And I think I enjoyed the camaraderie of that. I enjoyed living here and living with my friends and everything that goes with that, the friends I made here. So I felt very happy to be at Oxford, actually. I felt very proud to be here. Couldn't always quite believe it. I remember coming in again today and thinking that first view when you come into the quad is I always found that quite exciting to be in a place like this. So I think it was a combination of being at Oxford, which felt like the best place to do this, loving the work, and loving the freedom of the work in terms of you take on a period, but then you get quite a lot of choice of what you study within that period, and the friendship, I think.
Do you think that student life was different then from the way that it is now?
You would probably know better than me. I mean, it was strange for me going to the library and seeing all the laptops. I wrote every essay for you and Nick and everyone else by hand. So it feels very different. And I remember someone having a mobile phone and thinking that was a bit odd and a bit over the top, genuinely. And I remember being in the basement of the library and there was a computer in there and I saw my first website, which probably makes me sound a bit ancient, but it was the LMH website and I was curious to see it. So I think it's probably changed in some fundamental ways. I've got lots of questions for you later about whether people still use books as much or they're doing everything online.
So just coming now, moving on from Oxford and through your career. So you decided to go into Channel 4 quite early on. And that always seemed to me to be quite an edgy, kind of interesting place to be. So why did you do that? What was it that attracted you to Channel 4?
Yeah, so I was working in production. I was working time on a book show, actually, which felt like very good use of what I learnt here. It was presented by Nigella Lawson of this college, and David Aronovich, and I was an assistant producer on that. We actually got amazing guests because there weren't really many book shows around at the time. We had Seamus Heaney and Toni Morrison and Martin Amis. We had wonderful Summer Risher, a really great range of people. So I had been doing that, and I got a call from Channel 4 saying they were setting up a new channel called E4. This was in 1999 or 2000. And would I like to come and interview to be one of the launch team for it? So that's why I went there for that. And I didn't really know, I'd been on the production side, I'd never been on the broadcaster side, green lighting content. So that was my entry really into green lighting content.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
So green lighting
It's not a phrase that some people would understand.
So it basically means choosing what the programs are. And you get lots of proposals from production companies and lots of ideas sent to you, and it's your job as part of a team to decide what gets made and then help oversee its production in order to hopefully make it good by the end, I suppose.
So one of the programmes that I remember from that time, and I think it might have been E4, but perhaps not, was that series called Skins.
Yes, that was one of mine.
That was one of
Yeah.
See, and I don't know for those people who haven't seen it, but that started to come out around 2007, I think, something like
Yes.
that. And it's really interesting because you followed the lives, and I think it followed, as far as I remember, because I remember watching it at the time. It followed the lives of a group of Bristol teenagers through the 2 years of their sixth form. And it had quite controversial, but now it seems to me incredibly topical storylines.
Yeah.
Sort of like dysfunctional families, depression, eating disorders, post-traumatic stress, bipolarism, gender, substance abuse, bullying, all kinds of really interesting things. And I think there was like one plotline that I now think back on. It was that episode called Michelle, which was actually incredibly topical, because I don't know if you remember this, that Michelle actually begins to date Josh Stock. I remember this episode, and then Tony breaks them up by sending naked photos of Abigail from Josh's phone, and it's a story.
That would be very ahead of its time.
Very revenge. It's about sort of revenge, isn't it, or what they call revenge porn?
Yeah,
It's kind of interesting and really sort of prescient in a way.
So a couple of things about that probably worth saying. The first is the script was outstanding. So when you commission a greenlighted drama, you normally have one script before the first episode which you make a decision on, and it was the quality of the writing and the originality of it and the themes it took on were just so much better than the other stuff we were receiving at the time. So again, it does echo here. It was a judgment based on reading a story and coming to a judgment on whether it was high quality and would work, in this case, would work as television. The other thing I think that was really interesting about that production, and I think maybe helped give it that sense of being, whether it's ahead of the times or very in touch with the times, is the production team was made up of very, very experienced executive producer and a very, very young writing team.
Right.
And very young team overall. And what that executive producer did was test every line with the audience of that age before it came to us. And so there was an authenticity to it, at least at the time, and a set of themes which I think were very in touch with E4 audiences, because they were sort of proof of concept went through young people as part of the production team. So I think that was one of the reasons it did so well. And it was very helpful to me because it caused quite a splash and helped build my career. And
so what then led you to join the BBC? So it's a very different kind of environment.
Yeah. I think that's it's almost like things like you don't always get. I think throughout my career, I'm glad at all the jobs I've done so far, but you don't always get to choose when they start, because like all these things, they start or an opportunity comes when someone else leaves a job. So I think I would have been very happy. Things were going well at E4. Skins had done well. In-Betweeners had done very well, and there were a couple of other things that would, the channel was growing nicely. And then the person who was running BBC Three left, and I was one of the people they approached to interview to take on that channel. And at the time, I'd been at Channel 4 overall for about 7 or 8 years. And I think for me, after about that amount of time, I'm ready for a new environment or a new challenge. I was at the BBC for a similar amount of time. So although I could have gone on longer doing E4, I think I was ready for a new challenge and a new place, a new environment, and they offered me the job and I took it.
And did you find the BBC sort of institutionally difficult? I'm just wondering what the differences were between that and working for E4.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I think Channel 4 had about 900 employees, And the BBC is, I don't know, 15, 20,000, isn't it? Probably was around then, certainly. Much more bureaucratic, stodgier.
Yep.
But you have an ability to impact culture and the UK in a way you can't at Channel 4. You know, its presence in public life is so much greater that the things about it that can be frustrating are more than compensated for by what the opportunity it gives you to impact culture and reach audiences. Yeah, when you're running BBC One, you can reach 10 million plus audience. So the opportunity to have an impact with the UK, but yeah, it makes up for the fact that it can be at times a frustrating place.
So some of the things that I'm going to ask about some of the things that you were, people, I don't know if I'm right, but that I think that you're responsible for. So people often say that you were responsible for some reality TV shows,
yes,
like Big Brother or Celebrity Big Brother.
Yes.
And
so I worked
those,
on
those things
yeah.
seem to be quite contentious, actually.
Yeah.
And I just wonder what you'd say about that now.
So I'm glad I did them. I mean, they were in a range of many, probably hundreds of programs I was involved with over my career so far. And I liked having that variety. I liked learning new things. I'm glad I did them. Would I want to spend my time doing them now? No. But I'm glad they were part of my journey, because I think with each different kind of program, you learn new things. One of the chief skills of that kind of programming is very fast turnaround. You know, you have to edit very fast, you have to create very fast, you have to storyline very fast. So there's a set of skills in it that I found very interesting. I did some other kinds of reality shows. I did this one which we called The Games, which was a kind of sports reality show. I think I probably enjoyed those more. But I don't have regrets about particular shows I've done, because I felt like I learned different things from different shows.
I mean, some people would say that those shows exploit individuals who have vulnerabilities and are drawn to appear in them because they want to expose themselves in certain kinds of ways. Yeah. And there are ethical and kind of moral considerations.
I think there are.
That.
Yeah, I think there are, and I think they have to be counted very carefully. And you see it right through to Love Island now.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the pastoral care around them has got better and better as time's gone on. There's no doubt. But it's also true that you can warn people many, many times of the risks of doing a program like this, and it doesn't necessarily go in, or they don't necessarily understand. So actually the aftercare is one of the very, very important things, and I think that's got better over time. And I believe on things like Love Island now, that's pretty good, but that's been controversial in that way too. The flip side is other people see them as a great opportunity, you know, to change their lives and do something they've always wanted to do, and all of those kinds of things. But I think some of that criticism is legitimate, and they have to be handled with care.
Right, that's interesting. Yeah. And I think it's perhaps something that you'd only learn actually once you were in that kind of in that environment or making those kinds of programs.
I think
it would take a while actually for that to really be understood. Yeah,
I think that's true. It was it was invented by a Dutchman, John de Mol, Big Brother. And yeah, he created something which I doubt he could have ever imagined it would be such a great. And it's not on here now, but it's on in so many countries still.
So what is? I'm sorry to stick with this actually, because I personally actually used to find it not particularly engaging. I found myself getting a bit bored by it basically. Yeah. So what do you think the allure or the appeal of those sorts of programs is? Because I know many people are completely galvanised.
I think people genuinely get very interested in the characters and the relationships. Yeah. I mean, I think that's what makes them work. I think they're very well edited. The producers do a very good job of manufacturing some situations to create drama. But I think in the end, that's what people with most good television, whether it's high quality or less intellectual, I think it's characters and relationships. And how stories are told. That's the fundamental of all of it. And
in a way, that goes back to studying English literature.
It really does. It really does. I mean, I feel the things I learned here have been very how to tell a story, how to structure a story, characterization, all the things that I learned a lot about here have been very, very important to me through my career.
Yeah,
Genuinely.
We were having a conversation earlier on about the multiple uses to which a degree in English and actually in the humanities can be put, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So what's the work you've been most proud of over the years, if you don't mind me asking?
That's a good question. It's very hard to make people laugh. Comedy is really hard. So if there's one form of program maker which I think is actually the hardest, it's probably comedy, because making a lot of people laugh is really difficult. So some of the comedies I've been involved in, Car Share, The In-Betweeners, things like that, I feel very proud of that stuff. I feel proud of the way BBC Three evolved in my time there. It had a bit of an image that wasn't entirely positive, and I greenlit a lot of current affairs documentaries, documentaries about the developing world, things that changed the way some of those type of stories are told. Blood, Sweat and T-shirts, for example, that was really a series about the impact of globalization and the fashion industry. And we found a way of telling that story in a way young people wanted to watch. So I'm proud of what we did at BBC Three to evolve that channel. And some of those bigger shows, when they really have an impact, whether that's Call the Midwife, which is still on 10 years later, Skins and all those shows. It's quite meaningful when you see that people still remember them and value them. It's a nice feeling. So
you left the BBC. I have to ask about the point at which you left. So to around 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you were obviously doing really, really well. And some people had predicted, in fact, many people did, I think, that you would become the youngest ever Director General of the BBC. And I just wondered why you left at that point. Was it because you thought that the power of the BBC might be waning, or was it because you saw your future heading in another direction?
Yeah, so there was a number of reasons. First of all, I think I do get that thing around 7 or 8 years where I'm ready for something.
Yes.
I am. I felt that again. I felt like I needed something else. I didn't think, I don't know if anyone would ever offer me. I'm not sure they would have offered me the role of Director General, but I don't think I'd have enjoyed it very much or found it right for me. I think I'd have found it too far from the creative work. It's a management role, and it's a political role, and it's a very important one. It has to be done very well, but I was never sure, even if there was no other job that I wanted to do, which is probably an important way of putting it, or the best way of putting it. And I think I was just ready for a new challenge, I think. Yeah, it was enough in one place. I'd been at the BBC 7 or 8 years. I didn't want to become a BBC person. Yeah. And I felt if I'd stayed there for another 5, 10 years, I'd be a BBC manager rather than someone who was having an interesting, varied career. And so it felt like the right time to make a change. And it definitely was. I feel very glad. It was just the right moment for me, actually.
So I mentioned that I was going to ask you about this, and you probably won't tell me very much. Yeah. But can I ask a little bit about Jeremy Clarkson?
Okay.
So as far as I can remember, around 2014, there was a controversy over Clarkson, and there was an outtake of Top Gear in which he purportedly, though I don't know if it's true, used a kind of racially offensive term, and there was some publicity around the fact that you were not keen on him being in that post for longer, and somebody at the time said Danny is very moral, and I sometimes think that can tip into moralistic. Some people say it's not a bad thing to draw the line, and I think in some ways subsequent events actually have shown that you were right. And I don't know if there's anything more that you can say about that episode, without being indiscreet. But,
of course. So what's the best way of putting it? He's tried to make me a bogeyman, I think.
I had noticed.
Yeah. So everything about him departing from the BBC was apparently just because I didn't like him. The honest truth is, the BBC has to be a wide house. I'm not going to like everything on it or everyone on it. The whole point of broadcasting is you have a very wide range of views, people, differences of opinion, different perspective, and the place only works on that basis. So I would have found life much happier if I just never have had to think about him or be involved in his programmes. But there were 1 or 2 or 3 incidents where it was impossible in the roles I had to ignore it. And I did what I felt was right at the time. He didn't leave as a result of me asking him to leave. He left as a result of the Director General having investigated the final incident suggesting he leave. So I left that to him to do. Yeah, I felt I had to draw the line and say what I think, although it wasn't my final decision, but that's where I stood. And to be honest, this is probably more than I've ever said on it since, partly because there was someone at the heart of that final incident who suffered a great deal as a result of it. And I, particularly around the year or two that followed, I didn't want to add fuel to the fire and create more newspaper headlines around it. I thought that was the last thing that person needed. So Jeremy has talked about a lot, and I haven't over the years for that, mainly that reason, and also because I'm not sure there's anything to add. The facts are the facts.
Good. That's
Is that
really,
okay?
Thank you. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really, really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
Because I think I had noticed that if you look him up on it's a slightly different kind of. He's rather more, actually.
And it's a different age, and I think if that had happened now, it wouldn't have been so controversial. How things evolved and how things ended.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it just wouldn't have been controversial.
Yeah.
So that, yeah.
That's really interesting. I'm trying to think actually about television viewing at the moment. I mean, I'm going to ask in a little bit about what you're doing at the moment, but I'd really like to get your perspective on where you think television is at the moment. I mean, I don't myself watch a great deal of television, but I think that when people watch things, their viewing habits have changed. So when I think back to when I was, I don't know, a teenager or whatever, we sat and watched, the big programmes on BBC One, BBC Two or whatever on a Sunday night, and but everybody now watches programmes they watch things in a variety of different formats. I think that I was thinking about the popularity of Netflix and sort of box sets and different, it just feels, the world feels really different. And the idea of the telly in the living room, which is what we used to do, is really, people watch TV and on their laptops.
Lots of different ways.
Loads of different ways, tablets, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I just wonder what you make of all this and where you think it's all going.
Yeah. So I mean, we're in an age of globalization of television in a way that the internet has generated. Netflix played a huge role in. The most successful show on Netflix at the moment is a South Korean horror drama called Squid Game.
Yes, yeah. I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Now, the idea that a South Korean show with subtitles would be so popular in Oxford or London or Birmingham is unimaginable. And certainly when I was, at E4, say. So the globalization has really changed people's view of what they watch and how they watch it. And you're not stuck with 4 or 5 channels. I remember as a kid, Channel 4 starting, wanting to be home for the first programme from school. So you have this immense choice. So I think in some ways too much choice. You don't know where to start. It's quite hard to navigate. There used to be a schedule in 4 or 5 channels that we used to grow up with, and the American programs would have been Dallas and Dynasty. Yep. And that was about it. Kojak. But it's utterly different now. And it's harder for companies like the BBC, for broadcasters like the BBC, it's harder for any national broadcaster because the position they find themselves in, they're a national broadcaster with a national level of revenue fighting global organisations who have global revenues and can outspend them by hundreds of millions a year, if not billions a year. So it's much more challenging for the BBC, ITV, Channel 4 than it ever was because people can access content from anywhere and they can do so and watch anything from anywhere around the world. As a viewer, that's a luxury as well as a complexity. But it means it will never be like it was when I started in television, where you had minimal choice. You were actually guaranteed quite big audiences because there weren't that many choices, and now you can watch anything from anywhere, including with the cinemas closed, you can watch movies on the day they come out at home.
I was actually going to go on to thinking about film and the impact on cinema. Yeah. And what do you think that we're at the end of people going to the cinema?
Well, it's going to be very interesting. My company now owns one of the West End theatres, the Haymarket, Theatre Royal Haymarket, and we've seen audiences come back really strongly, like 90% every night, which is a very good audience, very, very good audience average. So I'm quite hopeful for cinema, and the Bond film's done pretty well, June's done pretty well. The question will be whether people come back for anything but the blockbusters. So it's the middle ground which may disappear a bit. And my hope is that independent film and the blockbusters will remain and people come. But you can't tell at this point. I think people are still discovering what lives they want post-pandemic and what they're prepared to go to and not.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. I was actually thinking about how long do you think that post-COVID period will last? I mean, I know it's very funny we're in it and you can't predict really, but I just wonder where you think that will go.
I feel encouraged. Like I feel it in Central London. Central London's coming more back to life. Certainly on some days of the week, and as I said, the theatres are doing. If you've got a strong show in your theatre, people are coming. So I feel encouraged by that. I think people will. My worry is people will trade the kind of convenience of being at home for the communal experience, and that I think would be a real shame. I think we lose something when we're not together experiencing things, and theatre's a good example of that. I don't know how much of the digital theatre you've watched, but it's really not the same experience watching a play on a telly. I mean, it's just not. And it was a good remedy if you couldn't go to theatre for a period, but it's nothing like the live experience. So I'm quite hopeful people will come back, but I think it requires effort to re-engage. And I think it's going to be partly dependent on whether people are willing to make the effort.
So do you think we've just got lazy, basically, and that
comfortable?
Comfortable, yeah.
Comfortable and convenient, and it's convenient and it's frictionless to stay at home. But I think you miss out on a lot. I personally, we're back in the office 3 days a week. I'm really happy to be back, and I find it makes you feel like the natural rhythms of life are returning, pre-pandemic life, and that feels very, very good.
Yeah. I share that view, actually. Yeah. It's like being back in college now, which is great, actually, and it's really, really so much better than it was, which is good to see. So can you tell us a little bit more now? I mean, I haven't really gone into it, but what you're doing a range of different things now, I guess, actually, and can you tell us about that and where you see yourself going?
Sure. So the invisible line, from what I've done previously, is really it's still about trying to find really high quality content and trying to work with very high quality creative people. That's fundamentally what my previous jobs in television have been and what I'm trying to do now. I'm just fortunate to have quite a wide canvas to paint on. So I invest in television production companies, some television series, movies. We own a theatre and we invest in a lot of plays and musicals on the West End and Broadway, and digital content. So we have a couple of businesses, one that is in the YouTube area, which is the fastest growing area of any of our businesses by miles. And we also have a couple of mobile games companies we're investors in. So I'm very fortunate to be able to invest across those 4 areas. And the film is sort of the poetry of it. You're never going to make much money from film. It's very hard just even to get your money back in film. And the more sort of businessy part is the digital investments, because they grow very fast and they become valuable quite quickly.
Right, that's really interesting. And do you think that you'll carry on in this vein for the future, or do you see yourself in 7 years' time having another shift? Yeah,
I think.
Is there another career that you envisage for yourself, like politics or something like
this? No, definitely not politics. But so this job, I had to learn so many new things to do this job about business and investment and commerce, that I only am about four and a bit years in. I only now feel I know what I'm doing, if I'm honest. So I now feel confident and that I understand it better. I've always, if I watch an edit of a film or a television program during this job, I felt confident in that from the past. But the business and commerce side, I had a lot to learn, and I'm still learning a lot. So I think this one's going to run a bit longer because the learning, I'm only at the point now where I feel I sort of know what I'm doing, and can make more of the right decisions. Still make mistakes. Someone says to me the other day, the key thing is to just make new mistakes rather than the same mistakes again, because you're always going to make mistakes. But I feel confident, so I'm going to hopefully stay and do this for quite a while longer, yeah.
So you've lived in London for quite a long time,
I have,
haven't you?
Yeah. We live in Primrose Hill, and yeah, I've lived in, apart from Oxford, it's where I've always lived. Those 3 years in Oxford, I've always been here.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Can I ask, actually, if you don't, because I know you've talked about it a bit, about your religious identity and what that means to you.
Yeah.
And any difficulties that you've encountered, because you did talk about the difficulty.
I got quite a lot of anti-Semitic abuse at the BBC. A couple of incidents involving the police, so quite nasty ones. I've had one. I think, I don't know, most people probably from an ethnic minority had them at different. I remember one at school. I don't remember any here actually.
No.
Not genuinely, because the ones that you happen, they stick with you. I don't remember anything here. But the most ferocious part was at the BBC, and it was pretty unpleasant at times. And the internet makes it worse because people can get to you more quickly and easily. And around a couple of controversial incidents, that stuff increased. They and all those things, if they're angry with you about one thing, they'll, the lowest common denominator will then try and make it.
And how did you, it's interesting, I have a friend who was at Oxford at the same time as me, and we've talked about the same issues with him actually.
Yeah.
And he works actually I mean, he's actually a great benefactor to Oxford, but he's obviously been targeted in this way as well. And we talked about strategies for sort of coping with this. And I just wonder what kinds of, strategy, because, it must make you so angry and upset actually. And, what strategies have you used to cope with that?
I mean, the first thing is you try and do is honestly think they must be nutters. I mean, so you try and not take them seriously on some level. But, if you get sent a photo of yourself with horns on your head, it's sort of that you don't forget it. I've tried in general to make the positive out of it. Like I try and do various things around Holocaust education. Yeah. Actually, one of the films we're co-financing at the moment is about the Commandant of Auschwitz, Rudolf Höss. So there are various ways in which I feel I can through my work, can do something positive in response to it. And we're involved in a couple of other projects around the Holocaust, which I hope will get made over the next 2 or 3 years. So you can try and do positive things, and then you can try and just kind of block it out, and you can try and marginalize it by thinking, should you be taking these people seriously? Criticism's good, obviously, if you can learn from criticism, but obviously that's not criticism, it's abuse. It's abuse, and you've just got to. But it's it can be hard. Yeah. It's interesting when you're made to feel different. When you don't feel different and then someone makes you feel different, it can stop you for a moment because you've not thought of yourself as different. I think of myself as very English, born in London, British parents. And so that moment where you become, people think of you as different is, that's not nice. Yeah.
It's really interesting. Yeah. Thank you. I think I might wind to a halt at this point because I think I would like to open the floor to some questions, if that's okay.
Hi, you mentioned that you gave the green light for a lot of shows. Do you find that with the culture now, with people actually engaging in discourse with producers online, that you're more aware of what young people want now?
Yes, and also we tend to do quite a lot of research. So a well-run channel will have its own research team or access to a lot of research, and that will include online polling, focus groups and things like that. And you'll know everything from what presenters the audience like, the young audience might like, to what kind of programs they're enjoying, what they don't like, what they think is missing. And the feedback is very good often. There's the sort of feedback which is the percentage points, and there's the feedback which is the comments that come with it, and often it's the comments that are actually really helpful because you get a bit more granularity and a bit more colour to the comments and what people think. So that research is really, really important. And also the thing to remember now is that we're really in a data-driven age. So if you're watching Netflix, they know exactly what you've watched. They know how many minutes you watched it for, seriously. They know when you might have paused it and come back. So they're gathering data, along with the company that's gathering data from everything we do on our phones. They know a lot more about you than you think they might. And that's research too, because they're learning all the time about what you want to watch. And then they're more and more saying, as an individual, this is what I think you'd also like to watch. We recommend you also watch X. And that's based on the fact they're kind of watching you, watching the service. So there's feedback and research you can do through talking to audiences and talking to young people, and then there's just the data that all these services are collecting all the time anyway.
Are you finding that it's making your job easier in a way, or more complex?
So there's an interesting debate around film and television now about whether an AI could choose the programs better than a human because they have so many, they have billions of data points now. I don't know whether it's my age, my generation, or just my view, and whether I think there's something very human about creativity, and there's something very human about being able to read something and have a reaction to it. And so I personally, I don't really believe, on average, a robot will choose better movies than a group of humans. Could be proved wrong one day, but that's my sense. And there are actually quite a few companies, particularly in America, who the whole company, the idea of the company is we have lots of data now. We can tell you which bits of your script from our data and our robot are the bits that are working and what you need to do more of, because we understand now what appeals to audiences. I don't find that personally very convincing, but it may become the norm over time. Certainly companies like Netflix and Amazon, they use their data a lot in deciding what to make. There's no doubt about that. And if it doesn't score highly enough in some form with their data, they may not make it. Whereas for me, I was lucky enough to be in a position where if I liked a script, that was it. We were doing it, and it was a very fortunate position to be in. But there was nothing really data-driven in that sense about it.
And that's really interesting because in a way you get to, and I'm guessing you still do, but you get to gamble away and go, you know what, this has not been tried before. Let's do something new. Right. So you mentioned with Skins how it was earlier than its time with some of the themes, and you went with that anyway. So I think I would, obviously I'm not in your position, but I think I'd probably share your opinion on that. But thank you.
No, you're absolutely right. You take risks, but by taking risks, it means you get some wrong. So the way I was thought about it is you have to get a certain percentage right to be doing well at it. Because some things you're going to green light just won't work. Some of them might be quite good and the audience just don't want to watch them, or there's something on the other side they want to watch more. But you get to take risks, which is a nice place to be.
Yeah, Hassan has asked online, have you ever turned down a project that was successful elsewhere, and did you regret your decision?
Yes, and I've been asked this before, and I've never been able to say the exact name of a program because I couldn't think of one, but there is no doubt that will have happened. There is no doubt that will happen because you say 99 no's for every yes, because just the volume of things you're pitched. So there's absolutely no doubt that will have happened. But I actually can't name one, but I would definitely say it's true. And I think it'd be true of everyone who works in television in those roles.
Anybody in the audience? Yes, lady at the top.
So I'm a massive fan of Skins, and so both my parents.
Okay.
So I was just wondering, did you expect it to blow up the way that it did when you gave it the green light? The fact that it's like transversed over generations?
No. All you can know is you think it's really high quality. And I felt the same in that period with, different kind of quality, but the in-between script made me laugh out loud. And so you can know it's good, but you never really know. And it's a really pleasant surprise when they're really big like that and have a cultural impact as well as a lot of people watch them. So I just knew it was really good quality, and I said the team around it was so interesting and such a great mixture of experience and youthfulness and an understanding of that generation and what was important to them, and down to, as I said, how they spoke, what dialogue should sound like. But you don't really know in advance. It's always a pleasant surprise. I remember a couple of other times on other shows like Call the Midwife, and I thought it was a really good script, but I had no sense of it being good. And I remember coming in that morning and it got 10 million views or something, and I think I just burst out laughing. It just hadn't occurred to me that it would happen. So it's a pleasant surprise. But you never really know. And as I said, there are things I've been involved with that people didn't really watch, but I was really proud we did. So some of those stayed with you as well because of their quality.
Harriet Bell sent a message in.
Harriet Bell! I hope it's the Harriet Bell I'm thinking it might be.
I think so. She said, we've got a question for Danny. Firstly, like to say hi to Danny, Christine and Nick from Harriet and Joe. Should video content be on the Oxford English curriculum? They would love an educational reason to spend a week binge watching Succession. Just their example.
Hello, Harriet and Joe. That's so nice. It's so nice to be connected to you. Harriet and Joe were in my year studying English, so to make sense of it for other people. Well, it could be quite a good voluntary course, couldn't it?
An option.
I think.
Yes.
An option.
That's it. Yes.
I think that's good. Succession's, outstandingly good. Have you seen Succession?
Yep.
Yeah, it's probably the best thing on at the moment, I think. Incredible writing and performances. So yeah, I think that'd be a good course.
Right,
What do you think, more importantly?
Paper 6 option, actually, that'll be it. A new paper 6 option. Yeah.
You like that?
Yeah, I like that idea, actually. Yeah. Well, we'll have to get you to come and help.
That'd be
us,
fun.
you know. That's
But
it.
yeah, I think it would be. Listen, from my perspective, as I was saying, I benefited greatly from studying English here in the way that story and character and structure is. What I learned here, had a big impact on how I worked and how I thought about each program I was involved with. So there is a connection on some level.
Yeah, great. And hi to Harriet and Joe back again, actually.
We were talking about you
Yeah,
earlier.
We were talking about you earlier. That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Questions from the floor. Ivan to begin with, and then we'll. Yeah.
Sure. I was wondering, so when you went to Access, how did you navigate any fear or uncertainty in that transition? Like knowing if you had the right skills or the right knowledge to do something so independent and so different from your previous role?
So I felt quite anxious and fearful, probably, because I just had so much to learn. So when you're in an organisation like the BBC doing those roles, a lot of the commerce and finance stuff is dealt with for you, because you have big teams, whole teams of people to do it. And sometimes one contract question will come to you if there's something that can't be agreed, or there's a money question that comes to you about how much should be spent on a programme. But they normally bring to you one question which they haven't been able to resolve themselves, and they're asking you for sort of a decision on. Whereas this was very different, a whole different set of skills around investing in companies, and so on. So, but that's the reason I chose to do that job afterwards, was because I think I was going to find it scary, and it was going to be a lot to learn, and I wanted to be educated again in something. And I wanted to be challenged. And if something's genuinely new and exciting, often it does make you nervous because you've got a lot to learn. As I said, it's been a journey of learning, which I'm still on, but I'm further on than I was when I started. So I've really, taking that leap is something I'd really encourage people to do at different stages in their career, because it's opened up a world to me and kept my career really, really interesting. I think if I'd have carried on doing working purely in television at broadcast or elsewhere, I think I would have got a bit bored in 5 years or 8 years or 10 years' time, and I would have run out of room. Whereas now, the opening up into making movies and doing lots around digital and theatre, I hadn't really done anything in theatre before. I've still got so much to learn about those forms and how to manage them financially and so on, that I know I've got a long, long runway to enjoy and to be stimulated by. So it was scary, but worth it, I'd say, from this point.
And so what was it that urged you to make that transition?
Hunger for something new, hunger to do things outside of television but within the creative industries, hunger for a new environment, and hunger to learn new things. Yeah.
Thanks, Ivan.
Thank you.
Other questions from the floor? Boov, you had your hand up. Would you like to? Yeah.
Hi. Earlier you were saying about how you didn't plan on going to the BBC, and you ended up with a first, which is quite incredible. But you also said how you didn't look that far in the future. Is that a mindset thing, or is that something that you were encouraged not to look too far ahead? Also, what would you say to a student going into Oxford? Would you say, don't think too far ahead, or just...
Do you mind me asking what year you're in?
Foundation year.
Foundation year. So I would, as much as possible, be here now. I really would. It's such an incredible place to be. It's intense and interesting, and certainly very different from where I grew up and my life before. You've got the rest of, you've got in 4 years' time or whenever it is, you can think about the future. Just sort of suck up every bit of here you can, and it won't make much difference. Honestly, it won't make much difference. I really mean that. What are you studying?
PPE.
Yeah. I mean, I had breakfast with a friend from LMH last week who's doing PPE. He's doing more than fine. He was in our year. And I'm not sure he would have ever necessarily thought he'd be where he is now doing the exact job he is. Probably would have been impossible for him to imagine when he was here. So I would make the most of every moment here and worry about it later. And you know, the other thing is, whatever you choose after you leave, you might do 5 other things a bit like me anyway. You know, there'll be changes along the road. Sometimes when people came to me and said they wanted to leave the BBC, I don't know if they were worried I'd be annoyed or anything. I was never annoyed. I thought if it was time for you to go, it's time for you want to leave. But they get very anxious about the next choice they were going to make. And one thing I often said was, you know, the thing is, if you don't like it, you'll just stop it and do something else. And I think you can get into a mindset where you think the next choice you make is so fundamental and is the decision that's going to set the path for your whole life. It never does. It's just one choice along a series of choices you'll make through your career. So I wouldn't overthink it, and I would just be here and enjoy every minute of it.
Thanks.
Thanks, Booth. Thanks. And so we've got time for, I think, just one more, really, if that's okay. Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
So I'm also, quite a big fan of Skins, and
They're all coming tonight.
No, but it's
That's
really,
it.
do you know, it's really lovely
Yeah.
because I think it was 2006, so it's a long time ago. So that's really lovely.
Well, that is kind of what I was going to touch on, actually. Kind of the, I'd say it's kind of having a resurgence, perhaps, like it's almost like I'd say to like a cult status, even though it did enjoy,
Where are you watching? Is it on Netflix or anything now?
It is on Netflix. That's where I watch it.
Yeah.
So I suppose my question was actually, it was quite unique, as you said, with the whole combination of like a young team of writers with seasoned experts and producers, etc. So I was wondering, but I also think that it's quite grounded in its time. There's definitely like a very early 2000s quality about it, but still it's enjoyed today. So I guess my question is, do you think that Skins could be reproduced today? Would it enjoy a different kind of popularity? I mean, like, if it were made today rather than back then, and kind of would you approach it any differently?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think they could. I think enough time has passed where if they wanted to bring it back, they probably could. It's hard to do something again later, the same thing well. I commissioned Poldark when I was running BBC One, and when the head of drama gave me the script, Poldark was initially on the 70s.
I remember it.
You remember?
Yes.
And when he gave me the script, why on earth? Why are we even looking at this? Why would we? Why bring this back? And I read the script, and it was a really, really good script, and it performed very well. It ran for about 5 series in the end. So there is a point at which something is ready to come back, and that was actually a much bigger gap. I think it really depends on, it really in the end comes down to how well it's done. It really comes down to quality. If it found the right team of writers, if it found the right group of characters that it wanted to build it, then it could absolutely work. But it can go wrong. There was an American version of Skins quite soon after the British version. I think it was disastrous. I think MTV did it, and it was really not very good. And it probably was more constrained by the limits of what you can do on American television at the time as well, in terms of decency. So it's easy to get it wrong, and it's harder to get it right anyway, but particularly when you're doing a remake, because people's expectations, if they love the show, are set very, very high. And most things when they come back don't work, but yeah, maybe Channel 4 will give it a go sometime. Happily, someone else will decide.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we must wrap up now, actually, if that's okay. must get some dinner for Danny, actually. That would be good. And it just remains for me to thank you very much for coming to see us again. It's been brilliant seeing you again. And sort of memories of the past, it's just great, as though no time has elapsed at all, actually.
Thanks.
So thank you so much for coming. Thanks, Danny.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.